So unfortunately, I don't have the happiest of videos here today. You guys can already tell by the title, but unfortunately my Syrian hamster Spice has passed away, and I thought I should just update you guys on what happened and all that. If you guys follow me on Instagram or Twitter, you may have already seen my post about it, but I thought that I should probably share it on here as well, since not all of you follow me on like other social media platforms. So yeah, I want to start off by saying, if I don't seem like overly upset, because I'm sure some of you guys will comment on that, just know that this is just kind of the way I am. I don't tend to dwell on things that happened. Like, obviously it is sad. Yes, I was crying when it happened and everything, but I don't know, I'm just not someone who likes to dwell on things. I just don't think me being sad for days at a time does anything. That's just me. Everyone like handles grief differently. Everyone handles loss differently. This is just how I do it. So yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Spice was my female Syrian hamster. I took her in as sort of a rehome slash rescue in January of 2018. So a year and a few months ago. But when I got her, she was already around 10-ish months old. I don't know her exact age, because the people who I got her from didn't know her birthday, but they just told me that she was around 10 months old. So, you know, when you do the math, she was 10 months old. I had her for like a year and 3 months. That puts her at over 2 years old, which is unfortunately pretty typical for a hamster's lifespan. They don't live that long, sadly. But unfortunately with Spice, it wasn't just really a case of her passing naturally of old age. I actually had to make the decision to have her put to sleep because she just wasn't doing very well. So over the past few months, it had become quite obvious that she was aging quite a bit. She was losing a lot of fur and she was becoming less active, but I would say things really declined over the past couple weeks when she had lost a significant amount of fur, and she basically stopped moving altogether. She was just staying in her hide 24/7. She wasn't using her wheel. She was not coming out to explore, which is very not typical of her. She was a very, very active hamster, but she just started staying in her hide constantly, and I guess she just wasn't really moving much. She would just hide, and she would occasionally come out to drink and eat, but even that was very minimal. She started eating way less, and she wasn't really even moving to eat that often. Her hide was on like one end of the cage and her food dish was on the other, and I actually had to end up moving her food dish and her water bowl right next to her hide because she wasn't able to walk from one side of the cage to the other very well in the last week or two. So since it was very obvious to me that she was declining, I do think that that might be another reason as to why I am able to handle this fairly well. I was, you know, prepared for it in a way. I knew she wasn't doing good. I knew she was old. Whereas, for example, when my hamster Henry passed away, it was very sudden and unexpected, and I did find that a little harder to handle because it just wasn't something I was expecting at all. Whereas with Spice, I'd had time to prepare and accept that she was getting older and not do. So in the last week is when I noticed she was doing exceptionally worse. It had gotten to the point where she wasn't even moving to use the bathroom, so she was just staying in her house, and she was peeing like on herself because she wouldn't even move. If she was laying down, she would just pee on herself. I was having to clean herself for her, which usually hamsters groom themselves, but she wasn't doing that anymore, and she was just losing a ton of weight. She was very, very thin. So the first few days when I noticed she wasn't doing very well, I just was assuming that she was going to pass naturally on her own. But as a few days went on, I noticed like she was, you know, still there. And well, it's never an easy decision to have an animal put to sleep. I do think that it was the right one, because I think it was very clear to me that she was obviously suffering. She wasn't able to move, and she wasn't cleaning herself or anything like that. Her quality of life was just not good at all, and that's not something I like to think about. You don't want your animals to suffer or anything like that, obviously. So I made the decision to have her put to sleep at the vet, because I did think that that was ultimately what was going to be best for her. I didn't think that it was fair to keep her around when I knew that she was in so much pain with such a poor quality of life, and it was just honestly pretty painful to see. It was like, it's really sad when you see them just in such bad shape, because you know that there's no way that they're happy like that. So I ended up taking her in. This is somewhat hard for me to talk about. This is like the first time I've ever really had to like make the choice to have an animal put to sleep. And it's definitely a hard one to make, because it's like, I know that I think I did the right thing, but then I don't know, there's just a lot of emotions that go into it. Thankfully, she's not in pain anymore and she's not suffering, so that's always good to know, because like I said before, you never want that for your pet. One thing I forgot to mention too is that in her old age, she also had masses, like tumors, developing inside of her abdomen, but because of her old age, there was really nothing to be done about it. So unfortunately, I believe that's what ultimately led to her passing, was the tumors, which were all inside of her abdomen, which sucks. A lot of small animals are really prone to developing tumors, which is really sad, but unfortunately, it just happens. I feel like I need to address this again. I had to mention this in my video about Henry, but I did monetize this video. I know people have mixed feelings about that, but I just had a $600 vet bill for my chameleon George. There will be a video coming up explaining that whole situation, but he is okay. Don't worry, it was nothing like that bad. It's just expensive when you have a really tiny chameleon who needs vet care. So I just had a $600 vet bill for George, like literally just today. He went in today for his tiny surgery. So I am choosing to monetize this video because I have a $600 vet bill to pay for. But yeah, I just felt the need to update everyone on what was going on with Spice. I think it's just important to remember that, you know, she got to live a good life. She had a nice cage and everything since I got her when I originally took her in. She was previously living in a critter trail cage, and then she got to spend the rest of her life in my Critter Nation cages, which are over 800 square inches of floor space, and she was definitely a lot of work for a hamster. That's, I guess, just how female Syrians were. She was a lot, but yeah, she was a little crazy. But for those of you wondering, I do still have my hamster Pumpkin. He's still doing just fine. Thankfully, he is also around 2 years old, so he is, you know, getting a little elderly for a hamster, but thankfully he's still doing fine. He doesn't have any signs of an illness. He's still active, and so thankfully he's still doing good. So in the meantime, I get to enjoy spending time with Pumpkin, but unfortunately I don't have Spice anymore, but I know she's, you know, she's not in pain anymore and she's not sick anymore. So I guess that's just the important thing to remember.